Infinite loop.
It is.
Oh, I see, yeah.
Okay, folks, it's 37:36, so I think we'll get started, if that's okay with everybody. I'm going to mute everybody again on Zoom. So excuse me for doing that and being very rude. It always feels very rude when I do this, shutting people up. So it doesn't feel guilty. It just gives me a feeling of power. Right, there we go. So everybody muted now. Good evening to everybody, and good evening to everybody who's watching on YouTube as well. It's nice to see you here. We've just completed our AGM. So we're now going to have a talk from our own member, Phillips Cooper, who's going to talk to us about Madeira being much more than cake. And if you know Philippa, you'll know that she's absolutely in love with the island of Madeira. So we're really looking forward to hearing more about it tonight. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Philippa. The floor or the Zoom is all yours, Philippa.
Well, thank you very much, Simon, and good evening, everyone, again. Thank you very much to everyone for joining us on this journey to a most amazing and beautiful destination. I now realise that some of you have probably been to Madeira more frequently than us, so please feel free to chip in or ask questions. I'm always grateful for any help. Madeira is sometimes called the Pearl of the Atlantic, but another name that's used is actually the Garden Island, and that is the name that really attracted us to start going just over 25 years ago. It really is full of the most amazing gardens and flowers all year round. Now, originally, the talk was going to be called A Taste of Madeira. And on our last visit, we actually brought back for you some of the traditional Madeira cake that you can see top left. That's called bolo de mel, which is translated as honey cake. It doesn't actually contain any honey whatsoever. It's made with molasses, and it's a heavy sweet cake, but it goes particularly well with the medium rich or boal Madeira wine, which we've also bought for you, and there's some on the cupboard behind me. So when we can meet up, hopefully fairly soon, you'll be able to enjoy some of the bolo de mel, some of the Madeira wine, and also some of the alcoholic drink called poncha, which you can see in the top photo. Poncha is actually made of sugarcane rum mixed with fruit juice and honey. And the bottles there are the ones that are pre-mixed. It comes in lots of different fruit varieties, traditionally orange and lemon, but others such as passion fruit and things like that. So those are the things that we've got to look forward to. Tonight, I'm actually going to be concentrating on the area around Funchal, as well as some information about the discovery of the islands. But I'd like to draw your attention to the slide bottom left, the famous Wicker Toboggans. And I'm sure those of you that have visited Madeira will have tried those. I know we have. I'm quite scared of heights and slopes, and they certainly make them wobble more if they know that you're scared. But I'll come back to those a bit later. Great fun. They share the road with traffic, but they've never had any problems. But I'd like to focus on the photo in the centre of the slide, and that shows part of a pavement being prepared for the Flower Festival. There are many festivals on Madeira. In fact, there's probably one every month, but the Flower Festival is always 2 weeks after Easter. And as we're coming up to Easter, I thought it was appropriate to sort of include that tonight. So that's part of a pavement being decorated, and the photo bottom right is a lady in traditional dress standing next to something called the Wall of Hope, which is part of the Flower Festival. I have missed out a couple of photos there. I'm afraid I can't provide you with some beef skewers, but I do suggest that if you do ever visit Madeira, that you choose to have the espetada, which is the beef skewer. It's marinated beef. Traditionally, cooked on a laurel skewer, but obviously those in a restaurant would be stainless steel. And that would be served with the traditional bread, which is middle left. And that flatbread is usually cut horizontally and filled with garlic butter. And that is a rather filling start to your meal, to be fair. But that's just a taster of some of the things that you'll see when you go to Madeira. So just move on, I hope. Why won't it work? Oh, this won't work.
You got it, Philippa.
It won't work.
It may be. That's it. Click on it now with your mouse. There you go.
Thank you. Sorry about that. First time I've done this. Right, so the contents, well, for those of you that haven't actually been to Madeira, just actually where it is, travelling there, which is really easy from the UK, a little bit about geology and the discovery of the islands, and then concentrating on Funchal, which is the capital, and then, as I say, finishing with the flower festival. So you'll find lots of things on Madeira. You'll find this very stripy fabric. You see, I've got my hat here and our grandsons with their hats. Very traditional fabric, which is worn at many of the festivals. I'd just like to point out the photo at the bottom, black and white. The pavements in Madeira are absolutely amazing. Black basalt and white marble. They come in the most amazing geometric patterns. And then the bank in the background, you can see basalt pillars by the Bank of Portugal. And the statue, I'll come back to that gentleman in just a little while. So I'm just going to do the first half tonight, and then we can do the food and tasting when we can meet up. So where is Madeira? So as you can see, it's off the coast of Morocco. And if you look at the map, you can see the Canary Islands just to the south. Very easy to reach. We always fly from Birmingham, just over 3.5 hours. And the airport, quite recently, has been renamed after the most famous person on Madeira, which of course is Cristiano Ronaldo. I have to say they are very, very proud of Ronaldo. So the flights from here, Mondays, Fridays, or most days if you can go from London. We're very lucky that we can get flights there so easily. So Madeira is not just one island, it is actually the archipelago of Madeira. The other fairly large island, which is inhabited, is just to the north east, sorry about that, and it's Porto Santo. So Madeira is by far the largest of the islands, and as you can see, 35 miles long by 13 miles wide. Currently, the population of the island is approximately the same as the population of Wolverhampton, about 260,000 inhabitants. So we've got Madeira, Porto Santo, which I'll mention in a little while. And then you have the islands, the Desertas Islands. These are a nature reserve. There are just rangers. There are no inhabitants on the Desertas. And then further to the south, you get the Savage or Wilderness Islands, again, uninhabited islands. So that's the actual archipelago of Madeira. It is surrounded by extremely deep ocean, and that's the reason that we get some particular fish on the menu in Madeira quite frequently. So that's the group of islands. Focusing now on Madeira itself, it's extremely mountainous. And those of you that visited Madeira sort of in the 1990s, particularly before the new main roads and the new motorways and the tunnels, know that the roads were quite hairy to drive along, very narrow, very steep hairpin bends, but with amazing views. So Madeira itself, obviously volcanic, and in the centre, rising over 1,800 metres. So for such a small island, you can imagine just how mountainous it is. And I think the contours on the map there just show how narrow the ravines are, with the exception really of the area around Funchal, which is in a very wide valley, making it ideal to be the capital. It also has an extremely deep harbour, allowing the huge cruise ships to dock. So that's the island itself. I'll just show you a few of the places on the island now. So the capital is Funchal. If I just put some photos on, so you've got the north coast, that's Porto Muniz, where you actually have seawater pools that you can bathe in, sorry. Okay, moving across towards the centre of the north coast, you've got very steep cliff faces, as you can see there. Further round, one of our favourite walks is called the Balcony Walk, which looks into the centre of the island. I'm afraid that isn't me on that photo, but I have had my photo taken there a few times. It shows you the mountainous interior of the island. And then moving round into Funchal. In February, you'll see the jacaranda trees in flower as you walk down the streets. That's just a view of Funchal, taken from the east. And then finally, just past Camara de Lobos, you have the second highest sea cliff in Europe, which is called Cabo Girau. So that just gives you a sort of snapshot of some of the scenery around the island. I'll do more of that in part 2 when we're able to actually meet up. So, arriving by air. I have to say that until the runway was extended, the size of the planes that were actually able to land on Madeira were limited. When we first started going in the 1990s, the planes were much smaller, but to sort of satisfy the increase in number of tourists wanting to come to this beautiful island, they reclaimed quite a lot of the ocean, as you can see from those photos there, and built a much longer runway to the Cristiano Ronaldo airport. Now, of course, there's no constraint on the planes coming in, and it was a marvellous feat of engineering. The main road, the VR1, actually runs underneath the runway. So sometimes as you're driving along to get to the east of the island, you've got a plane landing on top of you. In fact, there's a go-kart track underneath. So as I put there, it's quite an interesting landing, but beautiful, very scenic, and as I say, somewhere that we try and go to at least twice a year. So that's how we get there. So I'm not a geologist, I have to admit. I just thought I'd put in a couple of photos here. So the island, as I mentioned, is volcanic, and the majority of the rock on the island is black basalt, which, as you know, has small crystals because it cools very quickly. Because of the explosive nature of the volcanic eruptions, there's lots of cinders and pebbles and ash, which has been compressed into a stone that they refer to as tuff stone. And tuff stone on Madeira tends to be brown. The photo on the left I took on our last visit, when we were doing a walk along the southwest coast between Prajares and Ponta de Pago. And I think there you can see the layers in the rock. Now, when we look at the buildings in Funchal, you'll see that some have used the basalt, whereas others, you've got quite a lot of the tuff stone being used. But again, you can see just how dramatic. That's the south coast on the left, but then turning to the north coast on the right, that photo I took near to Ponta Delgado, Ponta Delgado, and you can see again how steep the cliff faces are, but extremely beautiful. So it's often said that the appearance of Madeira is compared to a piece of crumpled paper with the knife edge ridges and the ravines. So I hope that that will inspire some of you to come along. So just looking at this photo here, these photos here. So on the left, Madeira. I mentioned it's mostly black basalt and tough stone. Now the photo on the top left was actually taken on a Lavada walk. The Lavadas are water channels that have been were started in the 17th century, and they are used to irrigate the terraced farming. The Lavada in the photo, the Lavada de Caldero Verde, is one of the original ones. It was actually finished in 1796, and the edging stones are basalt. And we are actually just over 1,000 feet up in that place. So you can see there's quite a drop on the other side of on the railings. The Lavada itself is about 18 inches wide. And what I think amazed us when we did the walk was the fact that all of this was actually hewn out of the side of the rock face by hand. And I can't actually imagine how many people must have got injured or killed doing this. But the Lavadas are actually extremely important on the island, and there are some 20th century ones, which obviously are concrete, but it's really interesting, if you can, to do some walks along the Lavadas, particularly these old ones. Fascinating. But if you don't like heights, be a little bit careful which ones that you choose. So, as I've put there, Madeira is geologically a very young island. Only about 20 million years of erosion has occurred. And the photo at the bottom there just shows a view down to the coast. And you can see that there are very narrow platforms between the ocean and the cliff face. And if you look carefully, the green areas, that's where they've actually been cultivated. And the farmers that work this land have quite a job actually to get to where their crops are growing. But they are very hardworking people who are very proud of the island, and they try and cultivate as much as they possibly can, given the geography of the island. So on the one hand, you've got Madeira, as I say, very mountainous. It rises up to about 1,800 feet. And you compare to Porto Santo on the right, the neighbouring island, which is only about 23 miles northeast. And you can see it looks totally different. Again, it is a young island formed as a shield volcano. I'll just read it, a submarine shield volcano. But there's been no volcanic activity for over 8 million years, fortunately. But this island contains, as you can see, quite a lot of sedimentary rock as well. And the beach on the south coast there is actually about 9 miles of beautiful golden sand, which is carbonated sandstone. Porto Santo, in comparison to Madeira, only rises to about 517 metres at the highest point, so much flatter and much drier. Because of the mountainous nature of Madeira and the prevailing winds, you get a lot of mist and low cloud, so it's very lush and very verdant. And of course, the winds reaching Porto Santo are much drier. The island itself has actually had a lot more erosion, partly due to nature, but I'm afraid also due to one of the gentlemen that discovered the island, who managed to release rabbits onto the island in about 1440. And of course, as you know, when rabbits are released into the wild, It doesn't take much imagination to realise just how much damage would be done to the local flora, and I'm afraid that actually increased the erosion and the loss of the flora. So we have two islands very close together, but quite different in nature. Any of you that have been to Porto Santo and explored the north coast, it is more mountainous than the photos there. But perhaps a 2-centre holiday, a week walking the Lavadas and then a week sunbathing on the sunny beaches of Porto Santo. So to have a quick look at the discovery. Now, the gentleman on that statue there is Zarco. And I'm not very good at the pronunciation, so I'll call him Joe Zarco. And he, along with Bartholomew Perestrello and Tristan Teixeira, actually discovered Porto Santo in 1418. They returned on their journey a year later, and in 1419, they came across this much larger mountainous island, as I say, to the southwest. When they first saw it, it was obviously covered in wood, because the island of Madeira, that actually means the island of wood. The native forest on Madeira is actually Laurisilva or laurel forest. And unfortunately, like whenever anywhere is discovered, quite a lot of the island, the natural vegetation, it was deforested. But it's Laurisilva forest is the endemic species, and that's actually protected in the area near to the walk that I showed on the previous slide. The first capital was on the far east of the island at Mexico, and you can still see where they landed. There is a marker. So moving round slightly to further west, southwest, the current capital, or Funchal, was, as I say, founded in 1425. And literally, Funchal is named after fennel. The area, they obviously found huge areas of fennel growing in this wide valley, and they just named the capital Funchal, and that has stuck. The Madeira and the archipelago of Madeira is actually an autonomous region of Portugal. So you will find the Portuguese flag flying alongside the Madeiran flag, which is the blue and yellow one, with the cross of Christ in the centre. So 1419, it was first discovered. There we go. Just to mention, I mentioned that some of the wood had been cut down, obviously for building and other uses. And just to mention that what has been replanted since, quite a lot of eucalyptus, which is actually causing a little bit of a problem because of the amount of water that it takes up from the soil, but also fir trees, mimosa, and then some of the crops, obviously the vineyards, sugarcane, a lot of sugarcane, and the very famous Madeiran bananas. In fact, they're so famous they can't be exported because they don't come to the regulations of the EU on size and bendiness, but they're very good bananas. Right, I'm going to concentrate on the capital of Funchal. So in the past, you can see that photo I took in 2008. And I'm sure some of you that went sort of to Madeira at the start of this century may have also been able to enjoy the helicopter rides over the island itself. So first of all, you go over Funchal itself, into the centre of the island, but then fly out over the second highest sea cliff in Europe, Cabo Girau, which I had on one of the previous slides, which is quite thrilling, to be honest. The yellow building that you can see in the centre of the photo is the Santiago fortress. It was the historical centre of Funchal and was actually built in 1614. It's now an extremely good restaurant, and we would recommend that you try a meal in that fantastic restaurant. But it was, as I say, the historical centre of Funchal going back some 400 years. The photo bottom left shows you one of the Madeira wine lodges. This is actually the D'Oliveira's wine lodge, and the building itself was completed in 1619, but the Madeira wine companies, most of them, were started in about 1820, that sort of time, up to 1850. You'll notice on one of the casks there, it says the word Boal, and Boal is the medium rich wine. They actually come in 4 sort of dry to sweet categories. The very dry is called Social. The medium dry is Verdelho. The medium rich is Boal, and the rich or sweet is Malmsey. And there's one type of grape that's grown on Madeira, the Tinta Negra, which can actually be used to produce all 4 of those groups of the Madeira wine. So the D'Oliveira's Wine Company was actually formed in 1850 from an amalgamation of several smaller local family firms, which I say started up around about 1820. But you're probably wondering why I'm not using a photo of the most famous Madeira wine lodge, and that's the Blandy Madeira wine. I think that's possibly the one that most of you will have heard of. Again, obviously they do the 4 types, and Blandy's Wine Lodge is actually found on the main street through Funchal, Avenida Arriaga, and I have to say that the company itself, obviously founded by a British family, the Blandy family, it was John Blandy that actually went over to Madeira in 1808. The Blandy family actually comes from Dorset. John Blandy was born in 1783 in the beautifully named village in Dorset called Piddletrentide. But arriving in Madeira with his 2 brothers, Thomas and George, they founded the business. In 1840, John's son, Charles Blandy, purchased the wine lodge that you can still go and visit. It's called Adega de São Francisco. Now, obviously, they wanted to maximise the exposure, the global exposure of their brand. So Blandy's joined the Madeira Wine Association in 1925, and the Blandy family still run the lodge 7 generations later. It's currently Chris Blandy, who's the managing director, who's recently taken over from his father, Michael. So a lot of history with Madeira wine. Just to mention, the Madeira wine bottles are always kept upright. So if you get your Madeira wine, you don't store it horizontally, you store it vertically. And the reason is the Madeira wine will last much longer than the cork. So they don't want the Madeira wine in contact with the cork. So that's just something we used to do wrong. And they said, don't ever lie it down horizontally like wine. Okay, so the final photo here is the cathedral. And it's quite a modest building for a cathedral and quite a plain facade, as you can see. But the thing that's noticeable, and the reason I've chosen it, is because you can see that the facade is tuff stone. And that tuff stone was actually quarried from Cabo Girau, near to where I took the photo in the earlier part of the presentation. So the very noticeable brown colour. The inside of the cathedral is lovely, and it does contain some of the blue and white tiles that are famous all over Portugal, not only Madeira. So that's the centre of Funchal. And just coming now to the main square or municipal square, which are the top two photos. The most elaborate church, definitely, is the Jesuit Church and College on the top left. That was built between 1624 and 1647. Absolutely beautiful building. And whenever we've managed to go into the church, it's always been packed. The services are always very well attended. The island itself is it's a very religious Catholic island, as you probably imagine. But standing on the balcony in front of the church and turning to my left, you'll see the City Hall, the long white building. The first City Hall on that site was actually built in 1486. And then that site has been used for the further buildings. So that's the main square. Again, you can see the footpaths and the beautiful black and white patterns there in the basalt and the marble. Now, as you can imagine, if they need to do road works, well, footpath works, pavement works, it takes quite a while. And quite frequently you get parts of the footpaths that are taped off, and you get the workers sitting there cross-legged, working out which little piece of basalt or marble they need to put in to get the pattern fixed. But it's a treat actually to be able to see somewhere that's so beautifully presented, and also, as you can see, so clean and tidy, because they're very proud of their island. Everyone, they depend on tourism. It's quite a poor island. It's an island with no crime, so you feel very safe, and everyone is just so friendly. The final photo, that's one of the remaining city gates, just behind the promenade. And again, as you can see, that's definitely basalt. Right, you can see the colour there. So, right. Now, some of you may know that unfortunately in February 2010, there were some terrible floods on Madeira, and a huge amount of rock and material was washed down onto the seafront. And it did take quite a few years to actually repair the damage. But the photo at the bottom there shows the new promenade, which is extremely smart, beautifully planted out, and a joy to be able to just sit and watch the world go by. The photograph just above that is the St. Lorenz Palace. It was built at the beginning of the 16th century. It's now the military museum. It was formerly barracks, another beautiful building, which you can certainly go in and have a look around. Now, I mentioned that the most famous person, the son of Madeira, is Cristiano Ronaldo. I believe he's just been in the news because he's beaten the record for the most goals. I'm not certain. It was on the Madeira news. Ronaldo came from a very poor background, and his father actually used to train him. He had a very natural talent, but he is a real celebrity when he comes back to the island. So this statue, as you can see, is by the harbour, right on the seafront. It's adjacent to the Ronaldo Museum, or CR7 Museum, which is adjacent to the Ronaldo or CR7 Hotel. So there's a lot of CR7 or Ronaldo things on the island. Now, the story goes that his mum hadn't seen the statue until the day of the unveiling. And she was most upset when she saw it, because, to be honest, it doesn't really look much like him. But as you can probably see from the colour of his hands and other parts of his body, he is a very popular statue, and you have lots of people standing there taking their photos next to the great Ronaldo. The family is still on the island. His mum now has a very nice apartment fairly near to the harbour, and actually his sister still runs the shop that she has run for many years. So very much a celebrity on the island, as you can imagine. Now, no visit to Madeira on Funchal is complete without visiting the workers' market, Mercado de Lavadores. And in the background, the tree with the beautiful orange flowers is a tulip tree. And you'll see them all over the island. Absolutely amazing. The lady in the foreground, we've never actually seen smile. She's usually there selling her flowers, and we sincerely hope that when we manage to go later this year, she still will be sitting there. We really hope she is. And you can see that she's dressed in the traditional clothes with the stripy fabric for her skirt. There are lots of flowers that are sold over Madeira, but not all of them, of course, are grown on the island. The one, the Strelitzia, is probably the most famous flower that you will see for sale in the market, possibly along with the Agapanthus. But as I say, flowers are very, very important to the island itself. You can just see a glimpse of one of the blue and white tiles on the wall outside the market. Now, the market itself, the ground floor, as you go into the market, the ground floor stalls are the ones with produce from the local farmers. They just have a few sort of potatoes or passion fruit, things like that. Again, you can see the black and white on the floor there. And whenever we go in, which we do frequently, we always buy our fruit and supplies from downstairs. There is an upstairs, and obviously my photo is taken from upstairs, but those stalls up there tend to be more for the tourists. So the prices tend to be a little bit higher. So we find that the better value are downstairs, but please do go and visit. It's an amazing array of not only flowers, fruit and vegetables, but local crafts, including the wicker work as well. So as you go into the market, you'll see the blue tiles. That one there was completed in 1940, but that's very traditional that you'll find in lots of buildings, museums and churches. I'm sure you've all tried the Pastel de nata, which are the traditional Portuguese custard tarts. They should be made with flaky or puff pastry, although you can get short crust pastry ones as well. And that's a treat, I think, really for every afternoon when we're on holiday. So you definitely come back a lot heavier than when you go. The bottom centre photo shows the Strelitzias, which you'll see flowering throughout all the parks and gardens as you go around Madeira. Then you have a view of some more of the proteas and other exotic flowers on sale in the market. But the fish at the top, that's the black scabbard or espada. It's a deep water fish, which is why you can see it has very large eyes. It's quite an ugly looking fish, but I have to say it tastes very good. So just like the beef cubes that I mentioned right at the beginning, the espetada, it is really worth trying the scabbard fish. And as you can, or you may not imagine, it's actually served with banana. So lots of things are served with banana on Madeira. So espada with banana is a lovely meal. So that's a little bit about the market and what you can find in the market. Music is really, really important on Madeira. Whenever there's a festival, which is most months of the year, you'll find that each village, town, or sort of province has its own brass band. So as you're walking through Funchal or the other larger towns, you'll find the musicians playing and also the traditional dance. So again, you can see the traditional dress. The gentleman in the centre is actually holding the traditional percussion instrument, the brinquino, and they use that to actually keep time. It's a wooden stick, and it's got figures in traditional dress, and as you move the stick up and down, there are little castanets which, as I say, keep the beat of the time of the music. And you get folklore evenings, but as I say, quite often, particularly when it's the flower festival or the wine festival in September, you'll see all the traditional dancing in the streets. The bottom photo, that shows the mandolin orchestra of Madeira. You can see there's quite a lot of young people in that. There is, as I say, a fantastic musical tradition on Madeira, and I would recommend a visit to a concert by the orchestra. They are weekly, apart from in August, and they play a range of music, and it is just a fascinating evening. So lots of traditions, so the flowers, the markets, the traditional music. Now, some of you, when you go on holiday, may like to visit church, and just very quickly mention that there is an English church on Madeira. I say very, very strong ties with Britain. The Holy Trinity Church was built in 1822. It's in a small side street, Rua de Quebra-Costas, but it's the service at 11 a.m. on a Sunday, always extremely well attended. It'll have its 200th anniversary next year, so hopefully we'll be able to take part in that. And 9 years ago, we were lucky enough to be involved in producing the mural at the church. So again, that just emphasises the links between England or the UK and Madeira. So not only an English church on a Catholic island, the Blandy's wine, which obviously was an English family, and also the embroidery, the embroidery which is very famous on Madeira. That was actually a lady called Elizabeth Phelps that actually introduced, an English lady that introduced the embroidery to Madeira. Right, the Botanical Gardens, absolutely stunning. And you'll always see, whenever there's an advert for Madeira, see one of the photos at the top there. Those terraces are mostly planted with coleus plants. The Botanical Gardens are just above Funchal, still in Funchal city limit, but just slightly elevated, as you can see from the photo. Very easy to get to the Botanical Gardens. A number 29 bus will take you there at the princely sum of €1.90. But there are other buses available and taxis, but very reasonable to get into the gardens. They cover a huge expanse, and if you're there early in the year, that February, March time, you'll be able to see the pride of Madeira flowering, and that is Echium candicans, those beautiful blue flowers. And then I haven't used my own photo, I see bottom right, that's one that I took from Google, I'm afraid, but fantastic flowers, and well worth a visit to the Botanical Gardens. You can also actually get to the Botanical Gardens by cable car, and you get from a place called Mont, and that just leads me on to Mont. Mont is a town which, again, is just above Funchal. In olden times, the rich of Funchal would have a summer house just up in Mont because it was a little bit cooler. Now it's extremely easy to reach Mont by cable car. Very modern, very safe, very smooth cable cars which go up to Mont, and there you will find not only an amazing church, which I'll mention in the second part of the talk when we're all together, but also the Mont Palace Gardens. Absolutely superb gardens. They include a huge koi carp pond, as well as a Japanese garden, and there's also art and sculpture, and definitely worth a day to explore Mont. So perhaps go up in the cable car, have a look around the Monte Palace Gardens, but then come back down, either by the cable car to the Botanical Gardens, or if you're more inclined, do what John does, as in the top photo, and get the Wicker Toboggans back down the road. These are an extremely popular tourist opportunity, and you'll see the traditional dress. The tobogganists actually have the white uniform with the straw hats. Their shoes are quite interesting because they're actually going down the same road as the traffic. They need very good grip on their shoes, so they have some car tyre on the bottom of their shoes to give them extra grip. The steering of the Wicker Toboggan is by the rope, which hopefully you can just make out. It latches onto the front of the toboggan, one on each side. And as I mentioned, if, like me, you don't like heights or slopes, when we were going down, I think they actually made it go quite zigzagged, because they could see that I think I was getting a little bit scared, but perfectly safe. Nobody else is usually scared, just me really. Just point out that the Wicker Toboggans take you about halfway down into the centre of Funchal, so you just need to get a taxi back down into the town afterwards. Right, so I just have another drink. Excuse me. I'm nearly finished. Okay, so my last photo of Funchal is taken from, what's my favourite view actually. In the very background, you can probably see there's a digger still on the coast repairing the damage from the floods in 2010. This view is taken from the fortress, the St John the Baptist fortress, which is about 110 metres above sea level. It was built in the 17th century and actually gives that absolutely beautiful panoramic view over Funchal. So I hope that's given you a taste of Funchal and the surrounding area. And I'm just going to finish with the Flower Festival. So this takes place 2 weeks after Easter. You'll notice it's the gentlemen actually doing the designs. The ladies supervise, but it's the men that actually do the designs on the footpath. So you can see the very, very ornate and beautiful designs along the main streets of Funchal. The top right photo there with the circular flower beds is just by the cathedral. And you can see the ladies at the bottom just checking the work to make sure that they're happy with everything. This is usually done on the Thursday of the Flower Festival weekend. And as you can see from the date on that one photo, that was the beginning of April. So it's always fortnight after Easter. Okay. So that's the beginning of the weekend, but my favourite day, being a teacher for so many years, has to be Saturday. And this is when the children build the Wall of Hope. So you can see the children in their amazing and very smart uniforms, and also, of course, in the traditional dress. They love having their photos taken. And on the Saturday morning, they'll all assemble just outside the Blandy wine lodge on the main street, and then they will process through Funchal. You can see they'll either have a single posy, or the older children, sorry, a single flower or a small posy, and the older, the junior age children have the baskets, and as you see, some of them with them on their head, a lot of orchids. But I think that's quite a wonderful photo, because these obviously teenage boys in traditional dress carrying their baskets of flowers, and I think these photos of the older students really show just how proud they are of their island and the traditions. So I think this is a very special day, and it's something we've enjoyed twice and hope to go again. At the head of the procession, obviously, you have the ladies there in their beautiful dresses. And you can see just how many tourists there are. You know, it is definitely something to consider seeing. Right, that is what we call the Wall of Hope. It's in the municipal square, and the children just file through. There's some staging, and they just place their flowers. And there's a short service in the municipal square to follow that. So that's the more traditional part of the weekend. But on Sunday, things get very, very beautiful. And these are the type of floats that you'll see. You can buy tickets to sit on the seating on the promenade, and then you'll have at least 30 to 40 minutes of fantastic floats and displays. The floats obviously cost a huge amount of money to prepare. So with the flowers, the strelitzias there and the lilies, and a lot of them are actually sponsored by the hotel groups. And just to show you, you've got all the local people, the small children dressed as flowers. Absolutely amazing. It's something that's really worth being involved in. There's another float there with the anthuriums and obviously orchids again and proteas. And finally, just to finish off, I think when we first went to Madeira, it was the gardens that we absolutely adored. And so when we go back in August, this is what we're hoping to see from our window. So you see the bougainvilleas, the orchids, the datura, or angel trumpets, the bottle brush, and of course, the flower that you find all over the island, the beautiful blue agapanthus. So I hope I haven't gone on too long. I didn't time myself. I just want to say thank you for listening. Obviously, cake and wine will be provided when we can meet up in person. But I'd just like to say a little bit of Portuguese and say obrigada e boa noite. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you, Philippa. And I wish I could respond to what you've just said in Portuguese. So you're going to have to tell us, what was it?
Obrigada is thank you, and that's if you're a lady. If you're a gentleman, you say obrigado, okay. But obrigada for a lady. Boa noite is just good night.
Wow. Oh, we've learned some Portuguese as well tonight. Thank you, Philippa. Well, Philippa, you've certainly given us a taste of the island, and goodness, made us desperate to dream of those days when we can get away on holiday and visit all of these places again. There's a big world out there waiting to be discovered again, isn't there?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. I'm sorry I did go on much longer than I anticipated.
No, that was excellent. Thank you.
I forgot to put my
it was excellent. Philippa, it was excellent. Has anybody got any questions for Philippa?
Yeah, please.
An observation, it's very like the Azores.
Yeah. Yeah. To be fair, the Azores and Madeira are the two autonomous archipelagos of Portugal. So yes, but we have been to the Azores. We were going, and then that didn't happen. So I'd love to go to the Azores.
Yeah, great for whales and dolphins. That's why I went. But beautiful, beautiful islands.
Yeah. Philippa.
Yes, dear.
When you mentioned Malmsey wine, I immediately thought of that gentleman who was drowned in a butt of Malmsey. I forgot his name. His thigh bones are on display in Tewkesbury Abbey.
Really?
Yeah, they're in a recess in one of the pillars with a glass front.
I've never seen that. No, to go and have a look. Yeah, I mean, obviously, when we are able to meet up, I'll give you two different types of wine to try. But the cake goes particularly well with the sweeter one, as you can imagine. So that's the Boal. Yeah.
Yeah, we're looking forward to the practical session, Philippa.
Oh yeah, I've kept the cake. The cake's in the freezer. There's cakes in the freezer.
Excellent. And I should think so too. Anybody got any other questions for Philippa?
Philippa, when you do your next talk, do you have any photographs of any insects or animals, or apart from the fish on the plate?
Well, obviously the bird life, there are some indigenous birds, there's a particular type of chaffinch that you find on Madeira, and firecrest. There's the Madeiran firecrest. I've got some photos of some, but I don't really have a great deal. I don't really have a fantastic number of animals, I'm afraid. Obviously you can go dolphin and whale watching and turtle watching, which I've got photos of, but they're not very good. But yeah, there's lots of things that I haven't mentioned. It was quite difficult to decide what to say tonight, because
so maybe something you can include in part 2.
Yeah, I mean part 2. I mean you'd probably be too bored to see part 2.
No.
I mean, you see, the thing is, what I didn't do tonight was my whistle stop tour around the island, because clearly I decided to just stick to Funchal, because a lot of people stay there. But I mean, you've got Portamanish, Calietta. I didn't mention Winston Churchill, who made Camara de Lobos famous. He used to go on holiday and sit and paint in the harbour in Camara de Lobos. And that's a beautiful place too. So next time I'll do Camara de Lobos, Cabo Girao, Portamanish, San Vicente, Nuns Valley, Camacha, a few places. Oh, but particularly for Sue and Alan, I think the Lavada walks. Concentrate on some of the Lavadas, because they go to areas that are just really quite inaccessible, and you can be walking along those and you can just be totally on your own, unless you're on a guided tour, of course. But they're, they are, particularly the ones that were finished, during the 1700s, fascinating. Can't imagine how they were actually hewn out of the rock, to be fair. But they're so important to the island to keep the terraced farming going. So it's just,
more still to come.
It's somewhere that you can't get fed up with going to, because it's beautiful. The climate is fantastic all year round. There's flowers all year round. The people are wonderful. The food in the restaurant is very cheap to eat over there, and there's no crime really, so it's just safe and, well, wonderful. And that's what we see when we're in our apartment. That's what we look out at,
Wow.
Really complain.
They're the worst views, aren't they? Has anybody got any other questions for Philippa? No, I think in that case,
you managed to get to the island, the top point on the island.
Oh yes, it's quite. I'm not so keen really. The height or the far east? You mean Pico de Herrero? Yeah,
that's the one.
Yeah, Pico de Herrero. Yeah, yes, we've been up there a few times. Have you ever been on that new road that they built from Corral de Freirache up to the top? It's quite hairy. We met about a dozen.
No, we haven't been on
down the other way.
No,
obviously,
that's one on the bucket list.
Yeah, I'll have to tell you where it is. Yeah, obviously you'll see the raptors up there, and obviously but
right.
No, but so we don't tend to go up there every year. We go to Era de Cerrado, and then do the walk down into Corral de Freirache. But then, of course, the back of your legs hurt. It's very steep. A good time to go probably would be November for the chestnut harvest. So in February, you've got Carnival, music festival. August, you've got the religious festivals. Wine festival's good. You can tread your own grapes in September. But I don't drink the wine after. So, and of course, Christmas and New Year is very special. The Christmas decorations are stunning, and of course, the New Year fireworks are famous the whole world over. You can get 12, 13 cruise ships in on New Year's Eve. Pretty good. So, Gary?
So have you how many times have you been to the fireworks New Year's Eve celebrations? Because we haven't been able to get there.
Yeah, because our weeks are not obviously in then, but we have been once. Do you go regularly for New Year?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Not for the New Year. We go regularly throughout the year, but not the New Year because it's so expensive and difficult to get there. So yeah. So we like. Have you been to the Deserted Islands at all? Have you been a trip out to the Deserted? No. Apparently they got spiders there, but apparently poisonous spiders. But it's well worth keeping away from it.
We can see them clearly from where we are, but obviously being a nature reserve anyway. But I think the northeast of the island near Santana, obviously that is a UNESCO World Heritage Site because of the native Laura Silva forest with all the endemic, the Madeiran bilberry, and all the mosses and ferns that are only found in that particular area. So, I mean, I'm more of a botanist, really. So, that I find that fascinating. So, yes, definitely the garden island. So,
excellent. Right, listen, Philippa, thank you so much for that fascinating talk this evening. We look forward to the second part and the practical part of it as soon as we can get together. I just wanted to ask Sue to just add a few final closing comments to that, if that's okay, Sue.
Fine. Yeah, thanks a lot, Philippa. I know I sort of cajoled you into doing this talk, but I hope you've enjoyed doing it. And we've certainly enjoyed remembering going only once, but I'm glad we've been. Otherwise, it would have been hard to think of it, but great to be reminded. And I just had one thought that you were saying, maybe we'll be able to import their bananas now. Or not. No, they're EU, aren't they? So we won't. That's okay. They're very nice. But they're small, I think, aren't they?
They only go to Portugal. They don't go anywhere else.
Oh, right. Okay.
But yes, when we go later this year, we'll stock up with more cake and more wine and different flavours of poncha, because I know you don't like passion fruit, do you?
No, I don't. No.
You can get so many different types of passion fruit in the market, you know. But we'll buy some more samples for you.
Philippa,
yes,
we buy those Portuguese custard tarts from a deli in which Wenlock.
The Portuguese get them at Sainsbury's.
Now, yeah.
Say, we buy the Portuguese custard tarts from a deli in Much Wenlock.
Yeah. I think you can get them most places now. Obviously, Madeira cake that we have in this country is nothing like Bolo de Mel. I think our Madeira cake just the name from the fact that it was served with Madeira wine during an afternoon tea. Yeah. It's nothing to do with Madeira, our Madeira cake. And I think it's brilliant that Bolo de Mel means honey cake and there's no honey in it, but you know.
I think you tempted Michael into a glass of port there. Is that right? Yeah.
Glass of port.
I think that's what he came. I think that's what he came back with. Yeah, there we go. Look, see. Cheers, Michael.
I can't see.
So was that what you wanted to say? Sorry, we kind of cut across.
That's fine. No, it's very interesting. And
I said everybody's health.
Cheers, Michael.
Cheers. Have one on us.
Yeah. Not very controversial. I wanted to.
Brilliant.
Super. Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Philippa.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody, and we look forward to seeing you next month. I can't remember what date it is next month. So
John, not John. Yeah,
John Woodward next month.
Woodward.
Yeah.
And it's on the
Glasgow
demolition of the Glasgow tenements.
I
can't remember. Sorry, folks. It's Glasgow demolition. Now, if you've John has spoken to us before. Remember, he did a talk called The Demolition Man. And John is an excellent speaker, so it's definitely one not to miss. And it's on
15th of April.
Yeah, Thursday the 15th of April, and that'll be at 7:30 p.m. And we'll send the link out again as usual. And it'd be great to see you back on Zoom or on YouTube. So stay safe, look after yourselves. It's great to see you here, and let's hope that we can meet in the flesh very, very soon. Thanks all.
Okay. Thank you, Philippa.
Thank you, Philippa, again.
Thank you, Philippa.
Thank you very much. Thanks.